The sky was calm that morning when Flight 327 took off from Denver. The sun shimmered like gold across the horizon, and 176 passengers settled in for what was supposed to be a peaceful 2-hour flight. Among them sat a small girl, Ella, just 9 years old, in seat 14A by the window. She had a pink teddy in her arms and eyes full of wonder. It was her first time flying. At first, everything was normal. The engines hummed like a lullaby, and Captain Reynolds, a veteran pilot with 20 years of experience, chatted casually with his co-pilot, Sarah. But just 45 minutes into the flight, the plane suddenly shuddered, a violent tremor that rattled the coffee cups and sent a murmur through the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts," came the captain's calm voice over the intercom. But inside the cockpit, calm was fading fast. A critical system failure warning had flashed red across the panel, the autopilot was down, and both hydraulic systems were malfunctioning. The plane had lost control of its elevators and rudder. At 15,000 feet, the aircraft began to tilt violently. Passengers screamed as oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. The captain pulled at the yoke with all his strength, but the plane didn't respond. "We're losing control," shouted Sarah, eyes wide with fear. Captain Reynolds called the control tower, no response. The radio had cut out. A storm cell had formed ahead, blinding their radar. The plane was now descending rapidly through thick clouds, spiraling like a leaf in the wind. Inside the cabin, chaos broke loose. People prayed, cried, and clung to loved ones. But amid the panic, little Ella sat still. Her mother was unconscious beside her, struck by a falling bag. Tears welled in the girl's eyes, but she remembered something her father used to tell her before he passed away: when everyone else loses hope, that's when you must become the calm. Somehow, she unbuckled her belt, stood up, and started moving toward the cockpit, against the screams of terrified passengers and the turbulence tossing her side to side. "Sweetheart, sit down," a flight attendant cried, but Ella's voice trembled with courage. I can help." When she reached the cockpit door, it was locked. But the emergency latch had jammed open due to the system failure. She pushed it with all her might and stumbled inside. The captain turned, stunned. "Kid, what are you doing here? Get back." But Ella pointed to the co-pilot's controls. "My dad used to teach me flight simulators. I know this screen." Captain Reynolds hesitated, then saw something strange. The manual override control for the secondary hydraulics, something buried deep in the older model of this aircraft, was flashing on the panel. The pilot hadn't even noticed in the chaos. Ella pointed at it. "That light, it means you can switch control to manual backup, right?" The captain froze. That system hasn't been used in decades, but, maybe, he reached for the switch. It was jammed. "It's stuck," he shouted. Ella looked around, spotted a broken piece of metal from the emergency toolbox, and handed it to him. "Try this." Together, they pried the lever down. The cockpit lights flickered, and then, for the first time in 10 minutes of terror, the plane began to respond. Slowly, but enough. Manual control restored. Sarah shouted. Captain Reynolds could hardly believe it. "We've got a chance." He took a deep breath, gripping the yoke with renewed strength. The plane was still in a steep dive, but he began to level it out. "Hold on," he yelled through the intercom. The engine screamed as the descent slowed from 700 feet per minute to 500. 200, and finally, the plane steadied. Passengers erupted into tears and applause. But they weren't safe yet. The storm ahead was growing worse, lightning streaking across the sky. "We can't reach Denver," said Sarah. "Nearest airstrip is 20 miles north." "Then we go there," said the captain. For the next 15 minutes, every second felt like an eternity. Ella stayed in the cockpit, clutching her teddy, watching the storm flash through the window. "You did good, kid," said the captain softly. "You just saved a lot of lives." When they finally touched down, hard but safe, at a small rural airstrip, the entire cabin burst into cheers. Fire trucks rushed to meet them. As the passengers were evacuated, the captain turned to Ella. "How did you know about that switch?" She smiled shyly. "My dad was a pilot. He taught me everything before he got sick." The captain's eyes softened. "He'd be proud of you, Ella." You reminded me what hope looks like at 15,000 feet. The next morning, news channels everywhere showed the story, 9-year-old girl helps save Flight 327 from disaster. But Ella didn't care about the fame. She only cared that everyone got home safe, and that her dad's words lived on. When everyone else loses hope, you must become the calm. So remember this, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's a small voice in a trembling child who refuses to give up, even when the sky itself seems to fall. And if you believe that courage still lives in ordinary people, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this remind us, heroes come in all sizes, even 9-year-olds with pink teddies and hearts of steel.